alongside my partner, my brother, Eddie. I almost called you Edmund.
Eddie, you know.
Hey, man.
The real Iron Mindset. Today we have a really good friend of mine, John Hardy, with the CCDL. Um, he's going to basically break it down with the acronym, the CCDL, what that stands for. Uh, but right now, I just want to turn it over to John, and John, just run it down. We'll first start the acronym. What does
All right.
CCDL stand for?
CCDL is the Connecticut Citizens Defense League. We're a gun rights organization, single issue organization, nonpartisan, because there's a couple of Democrats, though I'll question that one as we were talking earlier about that. But we're modeled after another organization in Virginia, the Virginia Citizens Defense League, who also does a lot of the same stuff where we work at the grassroots level, Connecticut citizens, and then we also we help you with like my job in the organization. I'm a permit specialist, but we've got legislative coordinator. We've got our fingers pretty much all over the gun
Everywhere,
issue.
right.
And then at the same time, we're very active with the legislative issue, which is pretty big right now. We've got a bunch of lawsuits going on. We're suing several towns in the state, Waterbury being one of them, because of not following the law when it comes to issuing a permit. It's okay for the police to break the law, but not if you and I do it, obviously.
Yeah.
Then we're also doing the lawsuits.
Now, when you say you're suing them for not following the law, what is the basis of the suit?
Okay, so in Connecticut, you've got a permit process is laid out by state law, which means if you're a resident, you got to apply at the local level based on where you live, which is your police department or your first selectman's office if you don't have
Right.
it. Then when you go through that process, you pay your fees, your fingerprints, and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Then what's going to happen is you're going to go ahead and they're going to give you a temporary permit, and that temporary permit is good for nothing except for getting into the state to get your actual 5-year permit. The law says they've got 60 days to do that. Now, on top of that, it's even worse because they literally have 60 days. And then, so say when you get your fingerprints back, they've actually only got 5 business days or a week. But in the statute to it, and almost none of them follow that either. And here, in like for instance in Waterbury, I actually sat in the police chief's office with the president of our organization, Holly, and they said they're going to fix the problem.
Right.
They didn't. I know you're shocked, but they
How long
didn't.
ago was this?
About a year and a half ago.
They're still not on it.
They're still not on it. They kept saying the thing is the towns lie, and they lie. It's like they figure they can lie in an interrogation room, they can lie everywhere else.
Right. Sure.
So what they do is they say, oh, it's the state's the problem. Well, if that's the case, it's using the exact same state resources of all 169 towns in Connecticut. So that's BS because I've got towns that are issuing permits now in 10 days.
Facts. Yes.
So there's no difference in the resources. One of the lieutenants here that's responsible for doing the permits here, the person he assigned it to, was trying to say, no, look, I got a spreadsheet. Yeah, don't give me. You're fudging those numbers because if I got towns doing it in 10 days, you can't do it.
And I think right now that for being a big city, Bridgeport is issuing their permits pretty quick.
So believe it or not, Bridgeport's always been the best.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so the woman that used to do it, she was middle-aged and she had a child, and that's the last I saw her. By saying the last I saw her, I used to go to all the firearms sports trainings. There's nothing I can really learn that much now, so I go once every few months.
Right.
But she actually showed an interest in doing it. She had an interest in not doing it legally, but I give her a lot of credit because when her case was done, she wouldn't treat it like it's a day off. She would actually sit around and listen to other cases and observe which is what I used to do. And so she would do them within the statutory time frame and everything. Then when she had, because of her age, when she got pregnant, I'm assuming because my sister was the same way, that you got to stay home and all that stuff. So somebody else took over.
Right.
And then, forget about it, they went right down the same path as like New Haven and all that jazz. So.
Well, I thought New Haven was pretty good. No, they're not?
Oh, I thought that was deadpan humor. Yeah, no. In fact, so New Haven's one of the towns we're suing. And I got caught up in a media outlet because they asked me my opinion on it, and I go, the reporter goes to me, they go, so Elliker says that you guys are the organization that's supposed to back the police, yet you're suing the police. How is that working? I said, well, he's also the part of the organization that wanted to defund him.
Right.
So
right.
I could take that with a heavy grain of salt. And the other, like another town which we should have been suing, we haven't, that could always change down the road, is New Britain. And their issue is ridiculous because you think because of a Republican mayor, like in a lot of places, but it's a Connecticut Republican. And she gets on her weekly thing on Facebook and she says, "Well, it's an unfunded mandate. I've been told we have over 600 people waiting." And I'm like, first of all, it's not funded because the town can charge up to $70.
Yes.
At 600, that's $42,000. That's a temp for half a year. So hire a temp to do the administrative side of it and have
So
the
funded by the fee, correct?
Correct.
Right.
So every time they don't have to. There's still a few towns that either don't charge or they'll only charge a portion of that. They don't charge the full fee, but they can charge. The way the fee structure is, you got a $70 or $75 background check, $13.25 background check. That's just for the federal and state background checks. The local department can get their 70, and then when you get your temporary permit, you go to the state. You get to pay another $70, and that's good for 5 years.
And it's not including the fingerprint fee.
No, that is.
Is it?
So that brings up another issue. So it looks like we're probably gonna have to go litigious on a few other towns because Manchester is a great example of this. The former secretary of the Firearms Board there's different positions. He was represented police chiefs in Connecticut, right? He's a former police chief. And so he looked at it and laughed. They were taking the state form for your permit because it says $75, $13.25 fingerprinting and background check, and they were putting whiteout on the word fingerprinting to charge you an extra fee that they can't legally charge you. And we've got a bunch of towns that do that because a bunch of former heads of police departments and stuff started a company that does fingerprinting. So
Yes.
they wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Yep.
Okay.
You know, we'll give them the business, but that money should be coming out of the $70 that the town is doing. It's not an extra fee.
Because Waterbury, I believe it's an extra fee.
Yeah, they're using biomedics. And
Biomedics, right?
Yeah, that's the company. So.
Yep.
So the lawsuits, what would be the outcome if they were to lose? Do they still have to follow?
So if they lose, then it sets them up for civil structure as well. So one thing, if they lose, they know that now they've got a case where they've lost and they have to issue permits in the period of time frame. Now it makes it a lot easier for people over that 60 days to now they file, but they can set themselves up for civil litigation as well because of the fact they've already lost a case in court that's gone that far. So now let's get them for money if that has to be the case because this is getting ridiculous. But most towns are going to be most towns, once they lose, they'll say we don't want to get to that next phase.
Right.
It's like, I get a lot of people every day where they'll send me an email and say I have a problem with this town. I say, well, file your appeal if it's already been 60 days. That's called a constructive denial.
Yeah.
So when the town doesn't do their job, instead of them just saying you're not suitable, they're saying we haven't gotten to it yet. So they have, by process of lost. And you could file an appeal and they say, well, I don't want to disturb the process or anything like that. In that particular case, what happens is they can still issue even though you've got an appeal waiting. But the backlog is also another reason why people don't want to fight it. You're talking about if you have a constructive denial, it's usually going to be at least a year. They may bump it up a little bit earlier. And they're talking over 2. We've actually gotten that backlog down to 6 months at one point. But you've got Malloy and Lamont appointees
Right.
in there now that have no desire. I mean, the chairman of the Firearms Board has an I'm with Hillary sticker on his car. So, I mean, I'd be with Hillary too. If I don't want to get on a list, I mean, people tend to disappear.
Well, yeah, that's another rabbit hole. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not even gonna go there. But
Epstein
so
didn't hang
basically,
himself. Oh.
remember that. So basically, these towns, these cities, by law, it's 60 days.
Correct. So yeah, that's 60 days. Or
So me waiting that 1 year was bullshit.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
So, or it's even beyond more than that. So, for instance, they're supposed to take your fingerprints within a week, and then a week when they come back, they're supposed to give you the results, whether you're going to pass or fail.
Right.
They don't do none of that. They use, I've still got towns, so the state's electronic fingerprinting system's been up for a year now. I still got towns saying, we don't know what to do. And that's it. So what I tell people to do is if your town is doing any of that nonsense, file an immediate appeal. If they tell you right there that they're not going to be able to finish the process.
It was weird because that's what you told me.
Yep.
And it was weird. I knew the chief at that time, and miraculously, it was like the next week I had me.
Yeah, the more people fight it is the only way a lot of the stuff is going to change.
Does it cost anything?
No, the appeals process doesn't cost you a dime.
Is there like somebody you can go to and like ask about this stuff? Like if people are watching right now, they're gonna be like, well, where do I go?
CCDL.
So where would they just go
Well, our
online?
website
Or?
is ccdl.us. So
Yeah.
our organization, it doesn't cost any money to join. We have started doing a tiered paid membership program to help pay for some other expenses.
Right.
So starting at like $25 and up, the nice thing for that is
$25 a month or
no, it's a year.
a year.
And
Okay.
then we use that money. So our monthly meetings are at VFW in New Britain, the second Tuesday of the month. So what we do now is for those members, we use that money to buy the equipment. We're doing the same thing like you're doing here with your broadcast software. We do that and stream it to those members, and we actually have our own internet line put in there that's just ours and everything. So that helps it for a lot of people that can't make it to a meeting. And what's nice is now we'll get like about 100 or so people watching the streaming monthly meetings because since we've offered that, and then we'll get like 75 or 100 people in the room. But the problem I have with that is we have over 300,000 permit holders in the state of Connecticut. There's no reason
There's
why
not enough people.
people shouldn't be engaged. So ccdl.us is the website. Again, it's free to join, but we have all that stuff. Like if you have a permit problem, my profile is up there. You just click on the email and it'll go to my phone, and I'll spend all my mornings just going through my phone answering emails.
That's really cool. That's really cool how to get through that. Now, law-wise, I know January there was a bunch of stuff that they were trying to pass. Do you think any of that stuff's going through, or is
So,
it like?
Governor's bill, which ironically has 3 6s in it, which is kind of hilarious. The governor's
What bill is that?
6 7, something along those lines. It's on the CCDO website. I just pay attention from there. There's a couple of outside of that as well. So what the governor's bill is, he's kind of trying to do what they did 10 years ago with an omnibus package, like after Sandy Hook, and put a whole bunch of stuff in one bill. That's very, I mean, the stuff they want to do there is just nuts. I'll get into that in a second because there's 2 that are actually dropped right now. One of the ones that everybody was asking about was the ammo tax bill.
Yes.
That never made it out of committee. And the other one was the red flag law, amendments to the red flag laws. That never made it out of committee because we've testified about the problems with red flag laws and everything like that. And we can.
What is the major problem with the red flag?
I don't like the way you mow your lawn. I'm going to call the cops and complain. Proof you're screwed.
But they say they need a judge's.
No. So it used to be you had to have 2 officers to be able to do that to get the risk to go for the risk warrants and everything.
Okay.
They removed that requirement. That's the same thing for somebody that wants a restraining order. So they removed that requirement as well. So it wasn't hard. I mean, if there's a genuine threat to get 2 people, there's not an issue, right? If there's a genuine threat, you can more than get 2 officers to do this. The way the red flag laws are structured now is the hardest part with what we do is when people say, I'm married, it's not going to affect me or something like that. Well, that's my wheelhouse at CCDL, and over 90% of the people that I deal with are married couples. It could be as simple as a little argument. And the way the laws are structured now is there's a complaint made and they say that you're going to do harm to yourself or something. Like whether it's true or not, it doesn't matter. You're screwed. You have to go in, and you have to go in voluntarily because going in voluntarily and getting checked, the law says you lose your gun rights, your permit for 6 months. Let's say you argue it and fight it because you're pissed off that you're not suicidal,
right,
but someone's just saying that crap. 5 years. If they have to do an involuntary committal, you lose your permit for 5 years now. And before the laws were passed and amended again last year, they literally only had, for red flag laws in Connecticut, in 10 years, it was used 1,200 times. The last year since this was done, it was 1,200 times in 1 year. So, and they're using it for cases that have nothing to do with gun stuff. They're using it for kids in the house, and they found juveniles on that list that went through that process. So, it's like Ronald Reagan and many have said, the government that legislates least legislates most effectively.
right.
And you give them an opportunity, they're going to keep using it.
And they just take and take.
They take and take and take. We have beat a lot of the stuff in the past, but what happens, like I said, when you've got 325,000 gun owners in Connecticut, and you can only get 1,000 of them to show up and testify, or maybe 2,000 to write testimony, you're batting less than 1%. Now, we smoked the anti-gunners this year with a lot of that stuff, but I still look at it as being very pitiful on our part because of the bills that are coming up. The governor's package, that's got a lot of the really scary stuff in it. So in that package, you've got they want to go with 1 gun a month, a 10-day waiting period. God, there's so many things in that bill that were just really ridiculous. 18, that's another one. They always say they're never going after hunters.
Right.
They want to make it so 18 to 21-year-olds can't purchase. And the only guns they can purchase with the eligibility certificate is the hunting type firearms. But that makes this really interesting right now because yesterday or the day before, there's a federal case now where that went after just that exact thing in Virginia, and the judge says, no, you can't do that. Because the way I see it is, I don't care if you're drinking, smoking, whatever. If 18 is your legal age, 18 should be the legal age.
Right.
Stop creating this, you're semi an adult here because I want your uneducated vote between your 18 and 21 or whatever. But that's just so that's going to be interesting to see how that affects that. Now, Connecticut will try to pass laws. They're also going after anything assault weapons related, even stuff that's not really assault weapons related. The pistol grip firearms over in Connecticut are known as others. They're going after those prevents. You won't be able to get a prevent.
Right.
Now, as bad as that is, the on the horizon, on the periphery, the ATF and states have been losing terribly in the court system the last year, especially since Bruin middle of last year. So the nice thing with that is once we get more and more of these cases up there, they're getting smacked down. Being here in Connecticut, New York is a good example. Every time New York likes to play this game that drives me nuts. They did it with the Bruin lawsuit. The Bruin dealt with permits, right? And what happened was New York tried to be slick and say they're going to change their permit process because there was no way you can get a permit in New York unless you knew somebody. And then what happened?
That's the state of New York?
That was a city.
Or is it the city?
The state, though, in general, wasn't really a permit. It was more like a firearms owner's ID card, where you got to go to a judge and have a judge sign off before you can buy the gun.
Right.
And then you can go to the range and stuff, but that was pretty much it. So that violated Heller and McDonald, two big Supreme Court cases over the last 10 years. So what happened was New York says, okay, we're going to start issuing permits now. And so they were trying to do that so that there was no cause. The Supreme Court was like, yeah, no, we're going to hear this case. Right. So they just tried it again just last month, actually a few weeks ago.
Yep.
And they're trying to change it again. So what happened is they keep trying to make changes, like what's a sensitive place. One of the most egregious parts of that, which drives me nuts, is nowhere in law does it say that if you're the renter, if you rent property, you're the temporary owner of that property by legal rights. And if you want to let people come into your premises, you put a sign up that says you're not welcome. In New York, they want to say a sign that says, no, you're welcome to carry your guns here. So they were looking to do a scarlet letter, a blacklist of, of all those places and all that jazz. So stuff like that was going up. They're trying to say churches are sensitive places. So what they're trying to do to get out of that last week was saying that, the plaintiffs in that case were trying to do church security. So they're trying to say limited to church security rather than you and I going into the church and carrying. And it looks like the Supreme Court's not going to hear that either. As far as the excuse. So what they're saying is I think it was Alito that made a statement a few days ago saying that if the lower court doesn't solve the problem, they'll let them fast track it, or what they call a rocket docket.
Okay.
And because they've already heard it, they don't want to have these cases potentially looming and clogging up the calendar. I'll take it and bring it straight up. That's why when people talk about Justice Sotomayor saying, oh, look, she's passing these cases along to hear these gun cases, she really has no choice, because if a case doesn't get relief at the federal court level, you have to apply in your district. Like in this area, it's her. The second circus is her.
Oh, we're done.
And then no, because what happens if she doesn't, if she denies it, and you have cause, which you wouldn't have gotten there if you didn't, then you could shop to a justice that will allow it. So it's not like she's doing us a favor and denying it. She kind of has no choice at that point. So there's lots of cases that are going to be potentials on that. Texas has some few interesting cases as well. But the more interesting thing about this is when I started as an executive of CCDL, they've been there 13 years, I've been there 12. There was only 2 states in this country that were constitutional carry, and that was Vermont and Alaska. So as far as the whole gun rights thing, this country now it's
not New Hampshire.
You don't need a permit. No, wait, I'm getting to that one in a second.
Okay.
But including New Hampshire now, even Maine now, 27 states are like that now. So 54% of the country now, you don't need a permit. So they went the other direction, and I don't hear about blood in the streets like you're always going to hear on that. So Connecticut is one of the holdouts. They're going to probably get rid of open carry. That's another one they want to get rid of here in Connecticut.
Yeah.
Are you a proponent of open carry?
Yeah, I believe it. I believe carry however you want to carry. There's an old expression that goes back as far as our Constitution. Right not exercised is a right lost. So I mean, if you have that right, I think if more people open carry, then you have that discussion. People start understanding it. And the times I just carry. I don't plan to carry openly or concealed. I just carry. If I'm open and somebody asks a question, but the thing is, it's funny because your show name and everything, because mindset is a very huge thing in the gun community, right? It's both mindset towards your regimen and your practices, but it's also mindset towards how do you disturb the other guy's mindset, the bad guys in an adversarial sense. And the one thing about open carry is if people see that you have a gun, they're not going to start something with you.
Yeah, but it opens you up for a lot of questions, though. Correct?
Good, and that's what that's
Oh,
discussion.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
dialogue. You know, like the cigar shop that I used to have a key at. One night we used to have a thing we called Gunsmoke Mondays, and everybody comes down
I like
there,
that.
and everybody comes down. Everybody was carrying, and I'm from Hartford. You know, I know the element. I'm from the not so nice part of town, right? And this dude's standing outside. He puts his hood on before he comes in the store. So now you know. So I'm standing
Right.
up. I'm getting. That's back when you used to see me carry that 1911 all the
Yes.
time.
Yeah.
So he comes up, he looks, he sees, all right, this dude's armed. Then he looks and says, that dude is, damn, even the women got guns in this place. He walked around a loop and went right back out the store again.
Yeah.
And so and there's lots of cases where you can say open carry. It's deterred a lot of that stuff. I'm not afraid of a conversation. I'm not afraid of you disagreeing with me, but let's have dialogue instead of this, talking points and all that other nonsense.
But let's go back to that constitutional carry. We spoke upstairs, and you got these people out there. Oh, they're just going to go buy a gun. There's still background checks, correct?
Correct. So that's federal. So it doesn't matter where you go. You have to fill out a 4473 form minimum. Connecticut, we've got 2 other forms that go along with that. But the 4473 is at your gun store. You have to fill out. It doesn't matter. That's law, and that's the one that asks you the questions. Like for instance, in Connecticut, weed is practically legal now in Connecticut.
Yeah.
Not for buying a gun. It asks you on that form if you're a user, whether it's legal or decriminalized or not in your area, or medical, you're legally not able to buy a gun. But they don't want to talk about that sort of thing.
Right.
But, you're going to have to fill out that paperwork. A NICS background check is going to get done. In Connecticut, the NICS background check is done in conjunction with the state.
Right.
So what happens is we at our store, because of the high volume that we do at the gun store, we have it set up so that we can. If you have more of a unique name, you'll probably get through without us having to call it in. But otherwise, we call it in, and then once the background check is passed, Connecticut assigns a number that's already a derivative based on the ATF or the FBI rather for that background check, and then you're allowed to purchase and walk out with your gun.
Right.
But one of the parts of the bill they want to pass now, we would then say, okay, thank you for buying the gun, doing your paperwork. Come see me in a week and a half. Like that stops anything when I can walk into my neighborhood and I can pick the gun type, the gun manufacturer, and go, people, what up?
Yeah.
I see you in 10 minutes, bro. It doesn't change nothing, so.
But you have these people out there that think more gun laws will stop this gun violence. It's not let's get to the root of this fucking gun violence.
People. The part that's really frustrating too is they're coming after guns that are not used in crime. Like the media drives the agenda. I mean, that's the nice thing about being a Democrat in this country is, you've got the Pravda media that's gonna push their agenda, whether
right.
it's true or not. And when it comes to the gun issue, they're going after their so-called assault weapons. The thing is, they're so rarely used in crime. The number one weapon used is a revolver.
Is it?
Oh yeah. College of criminal knowledge. You're in jail with your buddies and all that stuff, and you're talking about how you got caught. They go, yeah, man, I left shells somewhere. Oh, but revolver, you don't leave any shells anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So used to be a Smith & Wesson J-frame was the most popular, but revolvers, if they know they're going to do violence, is what typically the most common. But now the big thing is the giggle switches from like Wish.com.
Mm-hmm.
So Glock actually makes a device that you can pop on the back of the gun, makes it a fully automatic gun. And there's no, and Wish.com was bootlegging them and selling them here in the country, and people were buying them like crazy before the ATF got onto it. And that's how I know there's a bunch of my neighborhoods. I was telling you before. I'm playing Call of Duty one night, and I'm like, I heard blah, and I go, wait, I didn't pull the trigger. That wasn't me. And so I turned on my scanner real quick, and all of a sudden, Shot Spotter was like, yep. Turns out I was 50 feet outside my window. Somebody went by, and they just shut up a car just to shoot up a car. Which really sucked because it turns out I knew the person who owned that car. She's a single mom, and she needed a car for work, and now she's got bullet holes in her car.
These are the people that suffer, all right? Because you have, I'm going on a rabbit hole. So,
what do they have to lose?
Right, but I'm saying you have, even with stopping a person, the ability to carry a weapon legally, it affects that single mom, right? Walking home to and from work at night, she can't fucking protect herself because we all know the cops aren't going to protect you.
Well, the worst part about that is with those black flag laws, and this is why I was genuinely pissed off. I let legislators know it's going to be abused by other criminals.
With the red flag?
Correct. So what happened was I know cases now where 3 women have been raped because of those laws. What happened is they had an ex call in and say they felt threatened to get a restraining order. And then through the restraining order, now she's not allowed to have her permit or carry her gun on her. So now he knows she's disarmed. And so I know 3 women that were raped because of it.
In this state?
In this state. And then I know, gosh, I'm up to I think 7 guys now where what they do is the new boyfriend says make that complaint, so then they know he's unarmed and they jump him. You know, because you can't go one-on-one anymore. You gotta get 5 of your boys to do something because you're scared. And then so I mean it's been used on the other side. It's like, for instance, when you buy a gun in our store, this is the part that cracks me up. So I used to run our paper room in the back during the beginning of the COVID era and everything, and twice they've had me hold people on the phone. The cops come in and arrest them on the spot. Turns out the guy's laughing. They go, "Yeah, I'll be back here pretty soon." 45 minutes later, they're back buying their gun. They got the wrong person. So the only people I have ever seen this background check actually catch are the wrong person.
Right.
In the 6 years I've been working at the shop. It's a ridiculous system. And the thing is, like I said earlier, you know, when we're finding ways to continually pass laws to weaken the punishment structure for breaking a violent crime,
Right.
you know, like remember, go back about 6-7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago, we started closing down the prisons in Connecticut. And then, why? Because it's a fake way of saying, look at the quality of life is so great in Connecticut.
Right.
And then where I lived in Meriden, you know, we had, you know, Hector the Razor was his nickname, was let out early. He was a violent offender. He went to go rob the gas station, which is a terribly bad section. I don't know, Meriden, there's not a really terribly bad section of Meriden, to be honest. And the guy complied. He was an immigrant that would give you the shirt off his back. I've seen him give people stuff in the store a lot. And he complied, and the guy went on the counter and shot him and killed him after he had complied. Now, he was already in there for a violent crime, and they let him out. And Milan, I just combined the two, because they're one and the same. They go ahead and they're trying to justify all this stuff, and I'm like,
wait, justify the killing?
Justify the letting people out early thing.
Okay.
And they're trying to make it like that's an isolated incident. I'm like, don't give me that.
No.
So one of the projects I'm looking to do right now is I kind of do the meme thing quite a bit.
Yeah.
But I want to have a template done up and get a couple people to volunteer with this. Every time we hear a name in the news, I want to look them up in the criminal records, look up, put their mugshot and all their prior charges and stuff like that on there, and say, you know, look how many times this person was let go because of the simple fact they're doing it. And you know, we're getting so politically correct now that we don't even recognize a crime, a violent crime on top of it, and then we're going to turn around and not blame the people committing that crime. We're going to blame the innocent law-abiding people for that crime. So.
Joey just brought up something too, real quick. I remember Trump wanted to make universal carry.
Right. So,
right? Is that right?
What a lot of people bring up is right. They want to make it so that like your permit's good for 50 states or maybe a national permit or something like that. You'd be surprised to hear me say this. I have a problem with that. And the problem is this: every method they propose involved some sort of a license that covers all 50 states. Now, let's say this election, you know, the Biden's puppet master is reelected,
right?
And we lose the House. So now they've got the House, the Senate. Now they've only got one thing that they have to say is no longer valid, and they've got the majority of both the House, the Senate, and then now you've lost that right.
Right.
So either it's going to be something that's like constitutional carry, but I think the toughest part that I wrestle with I like to consider myself a constitutional scholar. I've been studying this stuff since I was a kid. And, you know, we have that part of our Constitution that says powers that are not delegated to the Constitution are relegated to the states. And the Constitution, you know, it's 27 words. A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep their arms shall not be infringed. We don't need state laws if that's going to be the case. But, you know, Connecticut's Constitution, you might be surprised. It's Article 1st, Section 3rd, every citizen has a right to bear arms in defense of himself and the state. And that was only ratified like 50 years ago. So you think about that. That was just ratified in the last half century, and yet look at all the stuff they're trying to take away from it. So yeah, it's tough. And then the other thing too is I'm not going to give Trump a pass. He is not the most pro-gun president either. Before he decided to get into politics, he supported the assault weapons ban. Don't forget, he signed more anti-gun legislation than Obama did in 8 years, and he only had 4 years. That bump stock, the bump stock is goofy. I'll give it that. But the point being is, it's not a machine gun. The courts are now saying it's not a machine gun. And they're saying that the way Trump did that was illegal because there was another decision after the Bruin decision that we're using for gun stuff now with the EPA. And that decision had said if you're going to pass something, that affects the general public, that is legislation, not regulation. And so that being the case, that's what they're using. That's why there's 2 districts right now that you can buy a bump stock again, because those districts in federal court. That's probably going to go to the Supreme Court. There's something called, not to get too technical, but Chevron deference. And that's a big thing that goes back to a case from Chevron, the oil company in the 80s, and says that there's allowed to be certain amounts of regulation, which is how the ATF gets away with doing this stuff and saying it's a regulation, and even some states. So, however, that's gotten so badly misused that it looks like Chevron deference could be nullified and dropped pretty soon because the courts are sick and tired of seeing this, But where the left plays chess, we're still stuck playing checkers because of the simple fact that when we get in there, we got lucky in Trump's 4 years to get the 2 Supreme Court picks and overturn it into our favor, right? And if it wasn't for that, and Darth Vader Ginsburg, she didn't think she was going to make it. She thought she was going to make it all 4 years, and ego is the one that gave that seat to us. But that not being said, look at the fact that how come we're not stacking the federal courts too?
Well, that's coming. That's coming because listen, I vote for me. I don't vote political sides. But if the Democrats do get back in control, you don't think they're going to try and ratify where they're going to stack?
Biden said worse. He wanted to expand the Supreme Court.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, since they can't win, they want to add more seats.
Right. So I don't give a fuck.
We got to work
listen,
on that in Spanish.
They're all in the same boat, bro.
Yeah.
And
But at what point do we get pissed off enough to stop it?
I don't think our side wants to fight their fight.
But it is our fight.
It is our fight, but it feels like they pull all of these crazy acts. Like they're doing all this wild stuff, but our side's like, we can't really do that.
I've had problems with the previous president of the organization that I represent, who's a good friend of mine, but he said I was being too hard on people sometimes. I said, no, we have to be. I go, if we're going to, we act like, one of my favorite parts of Henry V in Shakespeare says, the gentlest gamester is the surest winner. And I'm like, no, that has long since gone. I want to play by the same rules the other side is playing by.
Yeah.
And, I can't stand like this whole, I love when people say, oh, I'm going to do this, it's a fair fight. There's no such thing as, if you're in a fair fight, your tactics suck. End of story. And I think that we need to start doing the same thing. So I do have a task that I do. It's kind of funny given the gun thing. It's called, what's called an operator. And what I do is if there's representatives in Hartford, Republicans that are, Republicans, because the Democrats, they can do whatever they want. What they'll do is they want to get something out there. A bunch of them know how to reach out to me, and I'll get that information out there so that their name isn't stuck to it or something like that. Because, that's why when Themis Clarities was running, when she got the nomination, I think our nomination process in Connecticut is so flawed. I don't know if it's as much flawed as much as the people doing it are, because they don't take their job seriously. But, she never should have been. She's a Republican, but she's voted against gun owners. Her sister's a way stronger candidate than she is. So I fought hard. And I know I've got, I did like the 14 or so thousand, but I know I got a few thousand of those votes out there. I kept spreading it in all the gun communities and stuff like that. I'm like, she's going to vote against us every single time. And then, sure enough, she lost. Now, that's the third time a candidate that has been anti-gun as a Republican has lost at the primary. So it tells you that the primary, there's a problem there, But and that's the way I see it is, if you can't stand on the platform on your supposed principles, and I say that because I am a registered Republican, but I'm more libertarian, than anything, because I'm a true constitutionalist. And this stuff in the Constitution state, no less.
Right.
My license plate means diddly.
Yeah.
Well,
What's worse is in Connecticut, there's a couple of cases where people were putting tape over Constitution, and cops give them tickets for it. Defacing.
Yeah. You can't even have a face. You can't even have a cover. The ones you get from the dealership that says whatever the dealership name is that, they say, oh, you're covering your.
But they let those guys go. But if you put tape,
but they give you a ticket for that. I've known people to get tickets for that.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's a cop that wanted to find a reason
Well,
to
yeah,
do one or
yeah.
another.
Well, they wanted to come in and say, how's things going? Anything in here that I should know about?
Ironically, so
Just give them an open door.
Right.
at the firearms board, when I see these cases, you would be amazed. I would have to say, way over half of the people that are appellants, not because they were denied a permit, but the permit was revoked and they got to have a hearing for the permit. The initial thing that allowed the cop to do an investigation was doing stupid shit. Like, for instance, don't have a if you're gonna do something illegal, maybe it's just hood logic in me, but don't have a kick me sign on your back, like illegal tints on your car,
Right,
illegal
right.
wheels, and all this. And all the time, I've seen that stuff turn into a reason why somebody gets pulled over, and that's what turned into
Right,
a reason why
right.
something else happens. But no, drive you out, whatever. But
One more question, and we can wrap it up, Eddie.
Yeah, I got a question.
Oh,
too.
go, okay. Go.
I was just concerned, like, obviously a lot of people, they always talk about getting pulled over. The cop asks you if you had a gun in the car, all this stuff. Like, for the people, what do you think the best ways to go about it? What would you
Connecticut
do?
has no duty to inform. All right, by law, we don't have a
Right.
duty to inform. However,
You could piss
especially when
them
it's
off.
your car, they're gonna run you anyways.
Mm.
So typically, I just make sure my hands are in plain sight.
Right.
And the guy goes up and said, "Just so you know, I do have a permit. I am carrying," and a lot of it depends on what town you're in. I've had good experience, like in Meriden, at a cop pulling me over. I still think he was wrong, but that's just me. But he comes up and he's like, "Are you carrying?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "What are you carrying?" I'm like, "The Lord's weapon, my 1911." And he goes, "I go, do you want to check it?" He goes, "No, no, no. I'm just gonna run your plate, whatever." And it came back fine. And what was funny was, because my permit had come back, and I heard my name on the radio when he did this, he specifically said, "I don't need backup. This guy's compliant. He's got a permit. He's law-abiding. He's got no record, whatever." Yet there were still 3 cruisers came, sign lights blaring and everything like that, just playing the role.
Right.
And it was funny. He just goes, "You just go ahead. I'm gonna have a special talk with these guys." So he was actually pretty cool about it. But then I've been in other areas where almost nothing you do. The best thing to do is have plausible deniability. And if you're really smart, you're gonna have a camera in your car that records you as well as the front of the road. This way, you have something that you can use on it. Like I have a rapid button on my phone when it's mounted, because actually I don't have the magnet on this one, it's the other one. But when I push the button, my phone is at least recording. And the thing is, they're recording. You should be recording for your own protection.
My last question. The gun owner's insurance and U.S. law. You see, what's your
So
take on that?
it's a good thing to have, especially because a lot of people just can't afford how much the state has unlimited wallet.
Right.
So they're gonna you gotta be able to protect yourself. Now it's important for me to let you know, like I said, in Connecticut you don't have a duty to retreat in your home. So things are actually pretty much in your favor in your home.
Right.
When you get out of the home, if it's a bona fide personal offense, I haven't seen any real cases where somebody legally carrying has gotten jammed up. However, you don't want to be that first case, especially how cheap the insurance is.
Mm-hmm.
The one that I recommend is U.S. Law Shield. On the CCDL page, if you go to the bottom, CCDL will get a cut, but that's not why we chose them, because they all wanted to give us a cut on their product. But the reason why we chose them is because they've already got Connecticut lawyers versed in Connecticut law on their team. Another thing that's really nice about them is a program like theirs. They actually have seminars around the state, and if you're a member, you go to them for free of charge and ask questions. They have a number you can contact them during the day. But more importantly, if you find yourself in the police department at 3 a.m., first of all, stop answering questions. You shouldn't be saying a damn thing unless you have counsel, because of the type of state Connecticut is. But you call that number, you'll have an attorney, and it's really inexpensive. I think the most expensive of these plans I've seen is like $150 for a year. For that's one range outing nowadays.
Pretty much.
Just cover your ass and get it. So I definitely think if you're gonna get one. The other reason why we've chosen them, and I think it's very important. I'm glad you brought this up. A lot of people don't know. So my background is I did go to law school. I never finished because I wanted an honest living, but I've read the agreements in some of these other organizations. One of the reasons why we don't use other organizations is a lot of them have it is if you're convicted, you can be held liable for some of the costs. So what's the point of paying for a service?
Yeah.
In the first place, U.S. Law Shield doesn't have that as part of the thing. And what's worse is in a state like Connecticut, one of the things that the state will do is they want you to plead to a lesser charge. one of those charges I can guarantee you will be one of the 11 misdemeanors that I'll deny you. There's 11 misdemeanors in Connecticut that you can't get a permit. I guarantee you it'll be one of those 11
right.
misdemeanors. And then so they think, oh, you're not gonna, but then you won't be able to get your permit back. But if you plea bargain down to that, a plea is guilty, and then now you can be held liable for all those charges again. So that's why, of those types of things, I think if you're gonna get one, U.S. law shows have to have it.
Was that cover you in all the states too, or just in
No, it covers you wherever. Yeah, but U.S. law show does have a national network. You're covered regardless of where you are.
same price to get covered no matter?
Yeah, it's like $150 a year,
like 150.
and then I think it's less than that, and $150 for like your family, your household, or
Okay.
something like
Yeah,
that.
I carry, yeah.
Because the other thing that's good about that is the way they're trying to structure the laws, which really is frustrating. Right now, you guys, you're my brothers. We live in the same house. I'm not there. You guys are obviously adults, so I say you know where my firearm is kept should somebody break in the house. It is legal for you to grab a gun to defend our property, right? The way these idiots in Hartford are trying to change it to this year was, and some of the anti-gun groups actually said this in the testimony, was they want to make it so only if you have a permit should you have access to it, which is ridiculous. If you're not a criminal, you should be able to defend your freaking property one way or the other. But having that insurance is something that can protect you if you get to that point.
Yeah, because I thought without a permit you could still get a gun in your house.
No, only if you have an eligibility certificate.
Okay.
So the eligibility certificate is if you don't want to get the permit. Eligibility certificate eliminates the local level. So you're not applying at the police department, you're going directly to the state. But it's pretty much just a document that lets you purchase firearms.
Just
or
one
ammo.
time, or do you have to?
No, it's not like New York where you have to go to the court all the time.
Yeah.
It covers you as many times. But
Transport.
it's either, well, that's the thing. It's not supposed to be transport, but I think the state is allowing it. It's one of those things where not anybody's really gotten caught on it for it to be an issue, or the cops would just let them go because they have the eligibility certificate. It's supposed to cover you from when you buy it to bringing it home.
Yeah.
And range, the only thing that's supposed to allow you to transport, so if you're grandfathered in, you have a firearm from before all these changes took effect, the only way you're supposed to transport that firearm is if you're going to a gun store, a gunsmith, or to actual sanctioned training, which is typically something that's publicly advertised somewhere or something like that. And one of the things they're trying to change on that now is they want to make it so that the class, which is an 8-hour class, is now a 6-hour class with 2 hours of range time, which means they're trying to make it so that only rich white people can get their permit if you're urban. So for people that vote Democrat, that's what's hilarious is they're going after you. They just do it in a way that you're too blind to see it.
Right.
You know, so what they're trying to make it so that my neighbors can't afford it by saying, because if you, that as an instructor would change my fee. My fee has typically, even 20 years ago, was about $100 because I only do small classes, but now I'm still only $135, and that includes your training, your ammo, your range time, everything. But there's no way myself and Dom would be able to keep our prices that we're very similar. We're only $5 off, I think. We'll be able to keep those prices with that 2 hours of range time. So now they're going to make it so it's going to be about $250 because of all the extra time on the range, the extra shooting on the range.
Then you got to pay for everything from the city, the state, all that
so
stuff.
if you're a single mom in Waterbury and you've got an abusive ex, you need to be able to protect your kids and everything like that. How are you going to afford it?
It's going to rip us $400 or $500, you think?
Right.
From start to finish?
Oh, absolutely. It's almost that now. You're looking at $354 now, depending on the fees and stuff like that, and your training and everything else included. Okay. So that'll jacket is about $657.
Wow.
And then you got to buy a gun and all that other good stuff. And
so there's one thing. There's one thing that covers all this stuff in general. It's a political term I've lived by ever since I first got involved in this stuff. Over 25 years ago, and that is, a lot of people that may watch this podcast or listen